What is up, YouTube? Eugenius here, back again. Today we're not messing around. We are looking at the two best brands in all of perfumery. The two brands are doing the most interesting, unique, and most intellectual things. And I'm not looking at this as, every release is a knockout of the park. I'm looking at these more as brands that are complete and whole, almost like a sporting team, a sporting franchise, a championship team, kind of like Michael Jordan's Bulls versus Wayne Gretzky's Edmonton Oilers. So we got the Chanel Les Exclusifs, and I want to be very specific. This is just about the Exclusifs. This isn't about Bleu de Chanel or Gabrielle Chanel. So it's just the Les Exclusifs verse, not even verse. It's more a comparison. We're going to be discussing. I don't want to be versing this. I actually, in fact, don't even want to turn this into a sporting match because it's just so unfair. But comparing to Frederic Malle's Editions de Parfum, which I think are absolutely two brilliant lines. Even though they are quite different, they're the same, really. Both leaders in fine French perfume. It's interesting to watch and listen to Frederic Malle in his live stream. The question came up, what other brands does he admire? It might have been what other niche brands does, but it doesn't matter. He answered the question, and the first brand that came up was Serge Lutens. He had a huge respect for Serge Lutens. He also brought up Chanel Les Exclusifs. Obviously, they're one of the leaders. Yes, he brought up the Hermès, and I agree with him. Hermès are one of the great fine French perfume brands. And he specifically mentioned, I hope I'm not mixing, I think he mentioned Jean-Claude Elena, and I agree with him exactly to what he said. With Jean-Claude Elena, I think Hermès is one of the greatest fine French perfume brands, but now that he's no longer there, I don't rate them, or I don't hold them in the same esteem. They kind of fall off the map with me. With Christine Nagel. That's just the way I feel. I'm not really into her compositions the way I was with Jean-Claude. To me, Jean-Claude is one of the greatest of all time. And, his work shows for it. He didn't say anything about Guerlain, which is funny because I wouldn't rate Guerlain with the Les Exclusifs. Current modern day Guerlain, I don't rate with the Les Exclusifs, and I don't rate with Editions de Parfum. And it's just nothing against Thierry Wasser. I love his work, but the only thing going for them at the moment is their Absolutes d'Orient, which are great and fine. That style isn't really my thing. As much as I do wear them, and I like a lot of them, it's not fine French. It's French take on Arab perfume. And I'd love to see them doing an Absolutes de Paris. Forget about the Orient. Stick to what you're good at. Absolutes de Paris. An absolute French collection. How about that? Why don't we start there, Terry? That would be absolutely brilliant. Who else did he mention? He mentioned Comme des Garçons, but he was kind of like, when they're good, they're good. And he admired them for being creative and doing their own thing and not following trends, which I am totally in agreement with. As far as I remember, that's all he really mentioned. So, yeah, I mean, are these the greatest of all time? Chanel Les Exclusifs and Malle? Absolutely not. To me, the greatest of all time, not modern day Guerlain, is vintage Guerlain. So you go back, you look at what they did with their heritage brands, Jiki, Shalimar, Mitsuko, Allure Bleu, Vol de Nuit, Chamade, Nahima, Abbé Rouge, Vetiver, Derby, Samsara, blah, 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 go on, go on, go on. And that to me is the greatest collection of perfumes ever created under one house, one brand, one roof. You simply can't beat those. And I don't think, either Frederic Malle or anyone at Chanel would argue with that themselves. But unfortunately, that's not longer the case at Guerlain. But let's get into these. Let's start discussing Polge and Chanel. You know what I'm really curious is they were also talking about, perfumers that he'd like to work with. He mentioned a few, but Jacques Polge's name never came up. And I always wonder why. Like, he is one of the greatest, if you think about it. Jacques Polge's work with Chanel, he's come up, on his own. And I'm not talking, he's done some great flankers, but I won't attribute those to him, like 19 and Cristal. And, he's reworked a lot of the classics. But I'm talking, he did Coco. He did Coco's flanker, Coco Mad, which is Coco Mademoiselle, which is brilliant. Egoist, Antaeus, Blue, which we know is trending, but it was a trailblazer. It started the whole trend, so you got to give him credit for that. And not only that, but that's just in the designer range. You go into the class, the Les Exclusifs, and sure, CUIR de Russie, Bois de Zille, and Gardenia, Sycamore are not his. They've been created way before his time, but he did come up with Coromandel, La Pausa, 31 Rue Cambon. So, those are a lot of hits under one perfumer's name. And there's a lot of argument that he didn't do them alone. There might have been, some help, but there's no proof in that. So I don't know. I can't argue that really until some proof is brought forward. But I've got here a couple of comparisons. So I took, a couple of genres, and is it fair to compare them? I don't know. It's all just really subjective. So I took, Frederic Malle's Sandalwood, and we're going to compare it to Chanel's Sandalwood. We took so that kind of thing. That's what we're going to do here. It's almost unfair, but this is what each brand put out for themselves. So for Sandalwood, Editions de Parfum put out Dries Van Noten, and Chanel has Bois de Zille. So right away, right off the bat, you're comparing one of the greatest perfumes of all, not just one of the greatest sandalwoods, but one of the greatest perfumes ever composed against a gourmand. As great as this is, and I gave it a glowingly positive review, it's just really unfair to judge these or compare them. But it's what it is, two sandalwoods against each other. Obviously, I would much rather wear Bois de Zille, or if I can only have one, it would be Bois de Zille. So it's just what it is. And I kind of hate doing this, but for argument's sake or comparison's sake, or just to have a discussion. And it can go back and forth. Not everybody's going to love Bois de Zille. Somebody might prefer Dries Van Noten. So we're going to take two vetivers, and again, we're comparing not only one of the greatest vetivers, but also one of the all-time classics in Sycamore versus a vetiver extraordinaire. And it's really difficult for me to do this because I do truly love both. I honestly and truly love both. If I had to pick just one, it would be Sycamore. But my truth is I wear vetiver more. I reach for vetiver more for whatever reason. I can't explain. But if at the end of the day, Eugene can only take one, it would be Sycamore. Here we got two of the more recent releases for each. Actually, this is more a recent release for Chanel, and for Frederic Malle, it's one of the first releases. This is Lipstick Rose and Mesia, both playing that rosy violet iris accord. So doing that makeup thing, that waxy cosmetic-y makeup thing. And I love Lipstick Rose. They're both very feminine perfumes, and I love this. I love the grapefruit accord in here. It's got this kind of leathery petitgrain. It's absolutely gorgeous. But if I were to compare it to Mesia, it's like it doesn't hold up. Mesia to me is absolutely brilliant. It's like comparing a symphonic orchestra with, I don't know how many members there are in a symphonic band, where, you know, every instrument is just hitting precision notes, and it's like music to your ears versus, I don't know, listening to an Adele record or something. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with Adele, but there's no comparison against the Philharmonic, right? The Mesia, and not only Mesia, but the Chanels are just so finely tuned, like a Swiss, like a Rolex, you know? It's like listening or smelling a Rolex. If you can smell a Rolex tick, that's what the Chanels are like for me. Here are the ones I was thinking. Two of the more recent releases on the Accords of Lavender. We have Boy, and we have Music for a While. And not to take away from Music for a While, it's that sweetness just kills it, you know. And I've come a long way from Music for a While, which has got that pineapple methyl candy floss thing going on. You know, it's got a great lavender. It's got an amazing patchouli. It's got, you know, what I think is a clove in there. Absolutely gorgeous resinous notes. But I can't ever imagine Chanel doing a sweetness like this. Like, the sweetness is on overload. You know, Boy is just, it's just so classic. This will never be outdated. Not that Music will either, but Music is just, it's more modern. It's, you know, that ethyl maltol is trending. I don't know, like, I just can't see Chanel doing ethyl maltol. I can't see them doing oud. To me, this again is just a finely tuned. It's not as exciting as Music for a While. I'll give Frederic Malle that. His compositions are way more exciting and bold and colorful, where the Chanels are a little bit more pastel-y, waxy. They don't make such a statement, but they are tight. They are finely tuned. They are elegant. They are precise. They are just geniuses. That's what they are. Genius. Okay, we got Iris now. Iris Poudre and La Pausa. And I've reviewed Iris Poudre positively. I love Iris Poudre. It's a little bit leaning femme, as much as I hate to say that, but it's bold, it's big, it's abstract. It's not really a theme of Iris, but as much as I love it, I would much rather prefer La Pausa, and I do prefer La Pausa. La Pausa to me is a dry, woody, powdery iris. It's not as bold and outrageous, but again, it's just a finely tuned violin. It's like listening to a violinist, you know, even, be it in the fucking subway station. It's not a subway station. It's just like the New York Philharmonic, if there's even such a thing. That's what La Pausa is. You know, okay, no, not to take away from Iris Poudre. It is the grand ball of all fragrances, and it's classy as fuck. I don't think it compares to La Pausa, though. I'm sorry. I love both. Oh my god, this is so... I feel like such a horrible human being doing this. Like, I love both, and here I feel like I'm trashing Editions de Parfum, and it's really not the case because I do really love both. And I even hate doing this, but you guys know I love my cuirs, my cuirs, my leathers, and we've got Cuir de Russie, which I've said in my videos before. I'm on record as saying this is the greatest perfume ever. And by that I mean like probably in a bucket with 10 other perfumes, okay? Not literally. And the closest thing to me that Editions de Parfum has to a real true cuir is the Moon. Rosen Cuir to me doesn't cut it. It doesn't have that smoky birch tar that I'm looking for. And, you know, the Moon, which really relies on a lot of sweetness from that raspberry, oud, which I don't fucking care about. It's gorgeous. I love this to death. I love the Moon. But again, it doesn't have the class. It does not have, it's sophisticated, but it doesn't have the class. You know, it's intelligent, but it's loud. It's obnoxious. It is screaming for attention. All what Cuir de Russie doesn't do. It is a confident, intelligent soldier. Dmitry Pavlovich. It's just fucking brilliant. You can't mess with Les Exclusifs and Cuir de Russie. So those are my comparisons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I had 6 comparisons, and those were really the best 6 that I could make. I know Frederic Malle's got a lot better things. He's got like Portrait of a Lady, which I didn't mention. He's got MUSC Ravageur, and there's just nothing really from the Exclusifs that I could have compared those to. Maybe I could have done MUSC Ravageur and Coromandel. That would have been a much closer comparison, but they're still very different from each other. As far as I'm concerned, right now, Chanel is the absolute best brand doing the best things, the most interesting things for me. That might be different for all of you, but this is for me. This is the brand that piques my interest the most. They could release something today, tomorrow, and, you know, I'm on that plane and it's coming my way. And I don't care what it smells like. I want it, you know. But the same goes for Frederic Malle and Guerlain and maybe Dior and Hermes too. I don't know. It's complicated, but I've always seen, not always, but, you know, with Olivier Polge now joining the helm, I see kind of the Les Exclusifs in 3 tiers. I see the vintages, so the, you know, the ones created way back when, Bois de Zil, Sycamore, Gardenia, and Cuir de Russie. So that was the first tier. Then you have Jacques Polge's tier, La Pausa, Jersey, Coromandel, blah, blah, blah. Second tier, and Olivier doing the 3rd tier. And if Olivier keeps going, they've got a bright future. They're absolutely, you know, they just keep knocking these things out of the park. And Olivier might not make them better. It's hard to say he's going to make the Les Exclusifs better, but he ain't going to make them worse. Because as far as I know, he's very talented. I love what I'm seeing from him so far. So really excited about that. Anyway, that's been my assessment, my comparison of Frederic Malle and Chanel Les Exclusifs. I'd love to know what you think. What are your thoughts? Which brand do you prefer? If you have a choice, if you've smelt them all, let us know. Love reading your comments. Do me a favor. If you like this video, smash that like button. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And thank you for watching. We'll see you all again.